Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Mark Cenite, and today, with some year 4 students, final year students, we will be sharing some information about the Week in We School experience. So helping me today are Athena and Warren. And we have faculty of the Week in We School who are here representing their tracks. So we have our chair, May Lewin, who is here, and she's representing strategic communication, along with Prof. K, who is representing strategic communication and health communication as well. And we have Chase Young, and Chase Young is from the Information Studies Division. And we have Kevin. Say hi. Kevin is a film studies expert on Disney. You can actually study that. Today, let me tell you a little bit about who I am first. So obviously not from around here, but I've been here a long time. I came to Singapore in 2001 and started teaching my first classes here in 2002. So familiar with Singapore for about the last 20 years. And I'd like to share with you why I stayed and what the students, the alumni, the faculty of the Week in We School have built. And we'll see if it's a good fit for you. Of the gist of the matter, I do want to let you all know this. Typically what happens at the end of these presentations is things get a little bit chaotic. So I just want to announce now up front that we have school tours of the Week in We School that are departing. The student ambassadors will be carrying signs, and they will lead you to the free shuttle buses where we'll take you to the Week in We School, very, very nearby. Okay? So I'll remind you of this at the end, but I just wanted to make that clear up front so that we don't lose any of you who want to join the tour.
It seems like.
So, our agenda for today
is there.
We'll be discussing what communication studies is, who we are at the Week in We School. We'll be exploring whether the school might be a match for you, a little bit of information about the admissions process. We'll spend a substantial chunk of time on your 4-year Week in We School experience. In the Theory Meets Practice segment, we'll be emphasizing one of our big themes, which is that at the Week in We School, you get your hands dirty. You actually do communication. You don't just read about communication or write papers about communication, but you do it. And we'll show you some of the examples of how we actually do communication as part of your education, instead of just preparing you to do it. And then we'll leave you with a few questions to think about as you make your choices about university programs. So, our focus today is on the first line here on the Bachelor of Communication Studies with honors. It's a 4-year honors degree, so it's not like a 3+1, it's a 4 years for everyone. And you graduate with an honors classification. The degree was established in 1992, so graduating classes started in 1996 of undergraduates. There are variations on it as well. Maybe some of you, if you've attended other talks at NTU, you may have seen me talking about the double major programs and the second major programs and the minors and things like that. There are many, many interdisciplinary options. Today our focus will be on our core offering, which is the Bachelor of Communication Studies, our 4-year program. So, many students, many parents at this juncture, the questions that we get are, what exactly is the scope of communication studies? And there are a number of ways that we can answer that question about what communication studies is. But I think one of the most effective ways to do it is to point to the 4 specializations, the 4 tracks that we have within the Week in We School. So students can choose one of these 4 specializations, or they can choose to mix and match and take a very interdisciplinary approach that's customized to their particular needs. So just a few words here just to introduce you to what the scope of communication is, because I think a lot of times people are a little confused about this. So actually the biggest specialization within our school is the strategic communication. And we call it strategic communication for the digital age because it's very much about new media at this point. So strategic communication embraces terms that you're familiar with, areas that you're familiar with like advertising, public relations, corporate communication. Those are all under the umbrella of strategic communication. So that's our biggest specialization, and the size of the specialization is actually matched to the industry as well. It's a sector with a lot of jobs available. Now, journalism. Probably one of the first things that you think about when you think about the Weekids School. Former President Weekids was a journalist before he was a diplomat and a president. Journalism is one of our signature offerings, broadcast and cinema studies. So some journalists are broadcasters, but of course broadcasting embraces entertainment media as well, and cinema studies, film studies, is under that umbrella as well. So what we have to offer at the Weekids School is an interdisciplinary set of courses, and you can steer your own path within that. So we'll be talking more about that as we continue here. Now, one thing that you're probably seeing already based on our remarks so far is that the field is perhaps more diverse than you expected it would be. Do all of our graduates go into media careers? They do not. Every industry needs professional communicators. And so this point here about transferable skills across industries. What we often find, and I'll show you some examples of this by talking about some of our alumni, what we often find is that our graduates will enter the industry after graduation in a communication-specific role. And then they'll rise up the ranks because leaders of organizations need excellent communication skills. And they need strategic thinking. And those are the kinds of skills that we emphasize at the Weekids School. Now, I'm not sure what you think of first when you think about the Weekids School, but the diversity of our people is probably more substantial than most people realize. So what I'm going to be doing, okay, so back to the sort of overall agenda here. What I'm going to be doing in the moments ahead is I'm going to be introducing you to some of our alumni and talking about what their careers look like. And so that the purpose here is to introduce you, or to remind you, of the scope of what contemporary communication studies is. So, Serene is with, she's a co-founder of SpeakDoc. Now, maybe some of you have it on your phone. So this is a e-health, a telehealth application. So what is an application? Well, I mean, in this case, an application is an interface for a platform. And what happens on this platform is that doctors and other healthcare providers link up with patients. Through this platform, you, as a healthcare consumer, as a patient, can have televisits with physicians. This application really took off during the pandemic. It was used to organize screenings, swabs, diagnostic tests, at weddings and workplaces. So Serene, her company that she co-founded with a physician, they partner with hospitals, they partner with clinics, they partner with government organizations to provide health care. And the vision is, with an aging population in Singapore, We can keep building hospitals, but we may run out of beds. And so the vision is that every bed, I'm paraphrasing the founders here, every bed in Singapore, your bed, could be a hospital bed if you have the right health care, if you have the right doctors coming in. And so the vision is to make healthcare available in your home, make it more available for all. Now my bet is that for many of us, Serene's career path is not the first thing that you think of when you think about communication. But you see what Serene is doing is she's using communication to provide a service to link up healthcare with patients. So just an example of the kinds of things that our people do. Now again, I just want to introduce you to the variety of what contemporary communication is. Josephine Chow, who I remember from, it was over a decade ago. Josephine Chow is one of the founders of ShopBack. Now I bet some of you have ShopBack on your phone. So ShopBack, in case you're not familiar with it, is an app where you can shop and receive cash back on your purchases. So an e-commerce app. E-commerce is a big part of what communication is today. A very large part of what the communication field is. So ShopBack. So when I was preparing for this talk last night, I was like, I've never looked into this app. I know about Josephine, but I never looked into this app. So I downloaded it and I'm looking through. And then at breakfast this morning, I'm discussing it with family, and I find out that actually our family, I don't do the shopping in my home. I found out our family has been using ShopBack for years, from the beginning, practically in 2015, and we've actually received $1,400 back from ShopBack. So I guess this is not advertising for ShopBack, but thank you, Josie, our alumni, for providing that. So Sarah is with Klook, which I'm sure some of you are familiar with, right? Klook is a travel app. So you want to go to Las Vegas? You want to go to Bali? Sarah has you covered. She does organization of package tours, or you can book a la carte on this app. And so a way of hooking up customers with the hotels, with the tourist attractions all around the world. So you see, again, the theme here is these are communication careers, right? What we have in each of these cases, back to Josephine, she's using communication tools, communication technology to link up retailers and customers. Sarah's using communication technology to link up customers and travel services. And let's look at Angeline's career path. Now, again, maybe not the first thing that, she's with MediaCorp, right? So traditional media. But her path is a different one than maybe you first think of when you think about communication. So Angeline, the title there, keyword I think would be development. So what Angeline's career path has been is she started out in government roles with EDB and with IMDA, and she was helping develop the media sector in Singapore, the communication media sector in Singapore. And now she's moved over to MediaCorp, and she's helping MediaCorp with their continual transition into the digital age. Now you think, when I came here 20 years ago, MediaCorp, of course, was already very much an established national broadcaster. Parents, all your life, under one name or another, MediaCorp has inherited the mantle of this national broadcaster. So what is the challenge that MediaCorp is facing today? They do television broadcasting, they do radio broadcasting, but they need to transition over to the new media environment. And so they've become absolutely huge in the news app space, in the web news space here in Singapore. And so that's the kind of role that Angeline has. So what I'm trying to convey is the diversity of what our graduates do, the different kinds of careers that they have. Now, here's a role that's maybe closer to the top of your mind when you think about what communication is. So Adrian was one of our most loyal alumni. Adrian is very typical from in the advertising industry for folks to move from one advertising firm to another. It's not considered, like disloyal to do this. And so he's moved around and moved up the ladder. And so you see his title there as executive creative director at Publicis. So he's an advertising creative. And so what kind of challenges does he deal with? Okay, you think about I know that some of the folks are very familiar with the business world, some of the parents are business people and everything, but we'll try to speak to the broadest audience possible here. You think of the position that McDonald's is in. Okay, your local McDonald's. Think about, they have a pretty steady business model, right? It's kind of a nice model. It's kind of like a ATM. It's a steady model, but the steady business is never enough in the corporate world. That's the way it works. You need growth. So how do you get growth? Well, one of the ways that you get growth is you hire people like Adrian and Publicis. And what they'll do is they'll advise you. You bring back your McGriddles, this specialty item. It looks like a sausage McMuffin to me, but I guess it's different. And you make this available on a limited basis. And when you do that, maybe some of you are the folks who queue up in the morning the first day that it's available, right? It's always interesting to me. Like, how do you take a business like McDonald's, which already has such a steady state, very high steady state, how do you make it go even higher? That's the kind of thing that Adrian will help you do in the advertising profession. Now, you should. So, SCAG, some of you are familiar, right? It's a standalone app. They produce content. So they started out producing memes. Now they produce a wider variety of content. They make people laugh, right? And Yushin's role is to pair up the creative professionals that are in-house at SCAG with customers, with clients who want memes produced, who want videos produced to help spread their message, right? Traditional advertising is never enough these days. You need to go online. And so SGAG is one of the companies that helps you do it. There's MGAG as well, Malaysia. PGAG, Philippines. They're all under this umbrella company of Hepno. And I was wondering, how did they get the name Hepno? And I looked it up on the site. So what the website says, you have to read it backwards to see the meaning. So, you see, once again, we're using communication to make people laugh and to allow brands to get their message out. Jillian, one of the alumni that I know the very best. When I started out in 2002, I taught 2 classes in January of 2002. She was in one of them. And Jillian, I supervised her professional internship. She was with Associated Press. And it wasn't long before Jillian was actually the head of the China Bureau of the Associated Press. And from there, it was on to the Wall Street Journal, and now the New York Times. So some of the most respected news sources in the world. She has a high executive position as an editor there. A face you may recognize from broadcast media, Jeremy. An enviable job, he gets to be on the scene reporting news. And he, again, has an executive job. He's an editor as well. So you see how he started out as a reporter, and then he rose up the ranks into a leadership role at the organization. A voice you may recognize, and maybe a face, Kimberly, the morning show on 987, a DJ and a producer. So once again, you see, she's on air time, but she does more than that as well. She's a producer of shows. Some of our entertainers, Rishi's pretty high profile these days. And Joanne Pei, of course. I remember having her in class. She was already famous when I had her in class. She was kind of intimidating in a way. I always tell people. So during that era, I'd go downtown and I'd catch a taxi, and Joanne was in my class, and then her face would be on the side of the taxi because she was doing like a promotion for Fujifilm and everything. It was like, wow, this woman's more famous than I'll ever be. The last thing I want to remind you of in this section about who we are, don't take our word for it. QS, right? The big ranking organization. They do rankings of universities, so NTU does very well overall, but they do rankings of programs as well, right? And so they do rankings of communication and media. And so you see, is it big enough so you can see who's on the list here? So this is the top 10 communication programs in the world. So two of my alma maters here. We've got Stanford and University of Wisconsin-Madison. There's NTU right there. So number 6 in the world. Now, do you see any other Asian universities up there? Okay, so that means we're number 1 in Asia. Now, let me borrow a joke from one of my colleagues then. So, okay, so we don't like to talk about other universities in Singapore, but if we're number 1 in Asia, and Asia's in Singapore, I guess that means we're number 1 in Singapore. No, okay, but I won't talk about any other universities. Just want to pick that up, okay? Arguments for you. Okay. Now, in some cases, it's what you've all been waiting for, right? But it's public information. Right? Okay. Don't panic. Don't panic. Don't panic. Now, let me explain here. So, 2 paths into the school. 2 separate paths into the school. Left and right. So the main road into the school is the academic achievement. And so you see our thresholds there for the different qualifications. Now, if you don't meet those criteria, don't worry. Aptitude-based admissions is also a pathway into the school. So if you don't meet the criteria on the main road of academic achievements, you're welcome to try the aptitude-based admissions. Now, let me just take one little minute here to tell you a little bit about aptitude-based admissions, because people always have questions about this. So, what we're looking for is an application that's highlighting significant awards and achievements. So if you're an Olympic gold medalist, then let's bring it on. But we don't have a lot of those in Singapore. So let me just advise you on this second one. Evidence of a passion pursued consistently. Now let me just tell you a little bit let me just highlight every word there matters. So first of all, what we need is evidence, right? So passion is also essential, but we need evidence of the passion. So a lot of times what we find in the aptitude-based admissions interviews is that students will say, oh, I've been passionate about communication since young and this kind of thing. But then, so maybe they'll say they're passionate about films, since young. And then you ask them what the last film was that they saw, and they can't remember. Well, see, what we need then is, evidence of your passion, right? How did your passion manifest? So you need to be ready with that. And we need to see some evidence of consistency for it to be a top application. Then. So just a few tips then. If you're entering on the aptitude-based admissions, you want to tell a story that leads to the Week in We School. Okay? Now, whichever path that you enter on, it's a holistic admissions process, meaning that everyone is interviewed in one way or another, whether it's an in-person interview or whether it's a video interview. We want to get to know you. You want to get to know us as well. You ask us questions during this process, as well as we ask you questions. Okay? one thing we really want to emphasize this year is scholarships. Now, so what you want to do is you want to check into the criteria for the different scholarships, see if you meet the eligibility requirements, and then put it in an application. So we have new scholarships this year. I'm not, at this point I want to emphasize the Weekids school, so I'm not going to get into all the details, but what I want to advise you is to look into the different options here. If you're a scholar and you also have financial need, there's a possibility to look into some of our newer offerings that will offer you additional help so that you can get extra funding for things like exchange. So, we've talked about who we are and the diversity of what communication studies is today. I hope that gave you an idea of that. We talked about the entry requirements for the school, and I do want to emphasize that we also want to hear your questions about whether we're a match for you. It's not just a one-sided conversation where it's just like, are you good enough? It's not. We're looking for a match, right? Now, a bit about the Weekids school experience, and here I'll be calling on our Year 4 students to help with the explanation. So, Year 1 through 4, and then a few words about things that happen throughout the experience. So in Year 1, the core courses. The core courses are listed there. So you brush up on your communication theory in the communication studies class. You brush up on your speaking skills and your writing skills. And there's an information analytics class. Now, don't be scared if you're not a numbers person. We have an excellent teacher, Dr. He makes statistics accessible to you. And as we've already discussed, it's a very data-driven industry, communication, these days. Everything is app-based. There's a lot of number crunching. There's a lot of artificial intelligence. So you need the statistical literacy in order to succeed today. Media law and ethics, that's a class that I teach. So you can ask my student helpers if it's okay. So those are the core offerings. Then in Year 2, two things happen. One is you start digging in on your specialization. So you remember the specializations, right? So same slide as before, but just a little bit of different wording here. You choose your specialization, or you can go interdisciplinary, and you can mix and match. And a lot of information on this slide, but I want to just point out a few things. What this is a pie chart of what the different offerings, what the academic units, the categories in which the academic units fall that are part of your degree. Okay, so just a couple things I want to point out here. News you can use here. Okay, so what you see here is your communication major core is that green 10%. So the major core, that means the communication studies, the core classes that everybody takes, that's only 10%, right? Much of the rest of your major is that big blue category, the 32%. Most of your major in communication studies is actually electives, okay? Now the reason I highlight this is it's very, very different from many other programs. Like if you for example, you go into engineering and it's mostly prescribed classes rather than the sort of electives, right? And I want to highlight this orange category as well. The orange category is the broadening and deepening electives. This is very wide open category. So you can take a language, for example, and perhaps more importantly, I want to emphasize, you can fit in a second major, you can fit in a minor, you can even do 2 minors if you wanted to. So there's a lot of flexibility there in the curriculum. So just want to highlight that to you as well. Now, in a moment here, I'm going to be drawing upon our student ambassadors for Warwick and Athena to talk about their overseas exchange experience. But a couple of remarks that I want to make. So, majority of Weekids students go on overseas experience at our hundreds of partner universities around the world. Okay, now, really need you to, if you're choosing between schools, right? You're choosing between different programs. So I really want you to hear this. For most Singapore students, overseas experience is a priority, right? And it's fine if it's not for you, right? You don't have to do it. But if you're in the majority of students for whom it is a priority, what I want you to do is I want you, when you're looking at your options, to compare how many students actually go on exchange in the different programs that you're looking at. Now, a friend of mine recently decided to change careers. What he decided to do, what he figured out was that the best way to change careers was actually go back, start over, get an undergraduate degree in his new field. And so he's looking at different options, and because he's my friend, he knows to ask questions. And so when the schools talk about it, their exchange offerings, he follows up with the question, how many students are on exchange this year? And you know what the answer was? And this is post-pandemic. The answer, in some cases, in some university programs, was that 0 students were on exchange that year. Many programs, they have exchange offerings in theory. Maybe they're open to only a few top students, but they just don't have the kind of partnerships that NTU has, and the Weekids School in particular. So what I want you to do is I want you to do your research and follow up and ask, is there really an opportunity to go on exchange? Or is it something that's more in the sort of hypothetical realm? Majority of our students go on exchange. Now, Warwick, you want to tell us about your exchange experience?
Oh. Hello. Can you hear me? Okay, great. So, hi, my name is Warwick. I'm a Year 4 Communication Studies undergraduate, and I'm currently specializing in research. And so I'm going to share with you a little bit about my overseas exchange experience, and after that, Athena, my other Year 4 friend here, will be sharing about her overseas exchange experience as well. So going on semester exchange to Japan was an incredibly eye-opening experience, and it was something that I kind of was hoping to go for ever since I matriculated in my first year. And I was fortunate enough to be able to secure an exchange spot in Rikyo University in Japan, where they had an intercultural communications college. So I learned a bit more about intercultural communications there specifically. One thing that I have to say about exchange is not only about the fact that you get to take classes in a foreign environment in a different country. Another important factor is the forming of cross-cultural friendships with other exchange students as well, because it really helps you to broaden your perspectives. And I feel that even though you might not necessarily learn as much as you might want to, one thing that is definitely invaluable is making so many new friends from all across the globe. So for example, I made a lot of friends who are from Austria, who are from America, who were from Taiwan, for example. And you get to learn a lot about things about how they do stuff overseas. So for example, how they celebrate holidays, how they eat, how they celebrate, and how they live. And I feel that that is one of the key takeaways I really had from my exchange experience. I also took classes such as intercultural communication in the language classroom, which helped me to understand how language acquisition is affected by intercultural differences. Another fun thing about exchange is the opportunity given to you to travel to neighboring states and areas. So my university was in Tokyo, but I had the privilege of traveling to other parts of Japan like Osaka, Hokkaido, and Kawaguchiko during my time there. Of course, attending university classes and submitting your assignments on time as well. So now I'll pass on to Athena to share about exchange experience in France.
Hi, I'm Athena. I'm a Year 4 student in Weekids as well, and I'm specializing in strategic comms, so more advertising and PR. So for me, semester exchange was definitely a time to remember because I went to France to a university called École de Management de Normandie. So I found the differences, right, in culture to run really, really deep, as Warwick has already said, from the way that they buy groceries to the way that they enter and exit the trains, and even to the way that they care about their schoolwork and things like that. So it was a business school, actually, and the modules that I took gave me a better understanding of both business and marketing as a whole. So at the same time, for me, I'm someone that doesn't find numbers very easy to grasp, so you can imagine that taking it in French was even more difficult, but I'm really glad to have had the support of a lot of friends. So I went with 4 Weekids students. I was lucky enough to go with some Singaporeans, but at the same time, we managed to travel around to a lot of different places within France and Europe as well, and I made a lot of friends in our other classes at the same time. I think that for exchange, it's always a unique part of the school journey, right? Because not only do you get to experience living alone in a different country, but you also need to manage your time, your habits, and how you spend your days, understanding and comprehending a new culture, buying new groceries, buying new winter clothes, for example, and even planning a lot more of your own travels and trips, because there isn't, like, for example, the same safety rules or the same levels of safety in Singapore than in these other countries. Overall, I would say that it's a really remarkable experience, especially if you get to go to a place that isn't a city. You get to go to maybe a quaint town, maybe you get to go to a place in America where you've only seen in the movies. Overall, it was a really valuable opportunity for me as a whole.
All right. Wonderful, thank you, thank you. Yeah, so this is really a priority. We NTU as a whole, but I think our school in particular, our college in particular, really make an effort to make sure that exchange is available to those who want it. And what I want to tell everybody is that resources are available to help with the funding as well. And one thing that many people don't understand here is that what happens with the exchange is you pay the fees here in Singapore. You pay whatever fees you're paying in Singapore to go to the overseas university. The overseas university is usually more expensive. So you've got that covered. But also, with some of our scholarships, there's actually funding that's available specifically for overseas experience. And and if not, loans are generous loans, like zero interest loans, are very available as well if you want to go that route. So exchange is definitely something we try to make accessible to everyone. Now, year 3, you'll dig further into your studies in the first semester, and then in the second semester is professional internship. Now, in a moment, I'll be returning to our students who will tell you a little bit about their professional internships to give you an idea of the caliber of work that is available. Basically what happens is you're brought in for not quite 6 months, just shy of 6 months, as a beginning professional. So it's not a low-level kind of position, but it's one where you're actually doing creative work and doing strategic work. Now, again, what I want to emphasize here is kind of same theme, but in a different context. What I really want to emphasize here, folks, is if you talk to other university programs, and this would be true of my own undergraduate degree way back in the day, if you talk to university programs, if they give talks like this, they will always talk about the availability of internships. And it's not like they're trying to deceive you. They're not. But what the reality is, in many cases, that the internship experience is not built into the curriculum. And so it becomes very difficult for you to actually have the internship experience. Or maybe the internship experience, they don't have a lot of partners like we do. And if they don't have a lot of partners, there's not a lot of openings. And the openings are only going to go to a few top students instead of everybody. It's built in at the Weekids school. So another point, so the same thing with the exchange as for internship. Do your homework. Don't just assume that these opportunities are going to be available. Make sure that they are available to you. Now let's hear a few words about the internship experiences. And what I want you to listen for here is the kind of work that our students are brought in to do, the kind of experience that they have. Yeah.
Right. Thanks, Prof. So my professional internship was actually spent at an organization called RiSense Limited. So it's actually a market research agency that specializes in market research for government clientele. So we study a lot on public perception on social issues and public perception on public policy that's coming out. My role was actually the qualitative research intern. So I helped out a lot of focus group discussions that were taking place. I took notes, I did transcribing. I saw how professionals in the market research world actually conducted all these discussions. Because as a student learning about focus group discussion, it's very in an academic context, right? But in the not in the real world, but in the market research world, in the commercial world, the way they do such focus group discussions and research is very different. So I think this experience helped me to really broaden my perspective on how research can be applied, not just in academia, but also in other contexts as well. At the end of my internship, I was actually offered a full-time position as well, which most of our Weekids students actually end up getting to. But I decided to maybe hold out on that for a bit to explore a bit of other options as well. Yeah. So now Athena will be sharing about her experience too.
Okay, so for my internship, I had the fortune of working at one of my dream agencies since I was in year 1. So this agency actually had like my favorite brands such as IKEA, Adidas, and Spotify. For me personally, right, I love advertising because it's about bringing a story to life and about connecting maybe brand values to different ways that you can execute it across creative briefs and stuff like that for the public to see. internship opportunity for me was especially valuable because I tried out a role that I have never done before, which is basically being a strategy intern. So my job scope, right, and my day-to-day stuff was mostly like working on cracking different briefs. So maybe think of like your favorite Netflix marketing show, like everyone in a room, like working with like bare bones and kind of like trying to figure out how to navigate maybe like when a client asks you, how do we better sell this to the Korean market or to the Southeast Asian market? And then we would have to react and think about how we could maybe pitch this more given trends that are trending in Korea or in Southeast Asia. Beyond engaging with a lot of these like interesting advertising materials, I also got to work with a lot of different people within the advertising ecosystem. So one other thing about internships, especially here at WeKimWe, is that they really give you a good sense of not only your own role that you're actually in, but the ones that you might be interested in as well. So as Warwick really like meaningfully pointed out, right? All of us are also looking at other areas that we could be developing in or passionate about. So in my role, right, I also got to interact with like account managers, so people who handle the client-facing and the business side, as well as the creatives within the agency. I think like one of the most important things, right, is that beyond engaging with like a lot of the fun campaigns, I also got to learn a lot more about other areas. So for example, like HSBC or like some of our fintech startups, these are things that I really wouldn't have like looked at if I didn't have this, chance to do it in an advertising agency from a communications staff.
Thank you. Yeah. So, what impresses me about the internships and the internships that we have faculty supervisors for internships, the depth of the work that they do is substantial. So it really gives you a sense of whether your chosen path is something that you actually want to continue, or if you want to calibrate your route. Now, we're reaching the end of the presentation here, so just a few minutes more, and I just want to highlight the final year project experience. And again, what I want to highlight here is that the diversity of options that you have, the flexibility, but I also want to highlight that at the WeKimWe School, the goal is when you do a final year project, it's not just a paper that's going to go on the library shelf, right, and be stored away for nobody to see. The idea here is that your work will actually have an impact, whichever category it is. So just looking at a few examples, our journalism projects, almost without exception, they get published in the newspaper. So this was one where the students actually traveled in the region and they found out about the human rights abuses, the human trafficking of fishermen, and they brought it back to Singapore, published in the paper, and the Parliament actually debated what to do about it. Another example, documentaries. Some of them filmed overseas, and then they actually get even more traction because they're shown overseas at different film festivals. Documentaries and dramas. Research. Again, research is not just a paper to sit on the library shelf. Many of our students co-author publications that get published in academic journals. A few words about final year projects from the two of you.
Okay, so as a year 4 student, better now. Okay, so as a year 4 student, one of our most exciting times is to actually launch your own final year project, as Cenite has already said. So for ours, right, mine was a campaign called Vibe Check. So we get to work with actually like a group of 4 people within the same track to execute a campaign. I think it's nice that we just talked about internships because actually in this FYP, right, itself, you'll work with your group as like a mini agency. So maybe, for example, like one person will be in charge of researching, one person will be in charge of art, one person will be in charge of strategy, one person will be in charge of like project direction, PR, outreach, things like that. So it's really cool to actually kind of practice a lot of the basics that we learn in, let's say, year 1, right, when we took modules like basic media writing. So how to write and dissect press releases and things like that to actually bring something to life. At the same time, one thing about final year projects in WeKimWe is that it's a time when the community comes together. So as you can see here, we just had our event called the Vibe House, which was held at Funan, and a lot of people from our school and the public actually came to check it out because they also believed in the same cause for financial literacy. Just want to plug, if you all are interested, it's our Instagram handle is AO Vibe Check, AYYO Vibe Check. Actually, social media is our art and our other, yes, three quarters of our FIP group are here. So yay, yes, unity. But yes, basically, this is honestly one of the greatest parts. It's like seeing your passion and seeing a lot of what you've learned and built together come to life in a campaign.
Excellent. So campaigns are a very popular choice for these projects. And then it's more of a research project, right? Correct.
So my final year project is actually a research project. It's a long title, but it's titled "Where is the Data? Examining the effects of data absenteeism on health app and wearable use." Now that's very long, but it basically examines how communication inequalities, such as income and education, affect adoption of healthcare applications and wearables. I think one of the key things about doing a research final year project is that you're writing a very long research paper with 3 other fellow group members, but you are not necessarily qualified as professors. You don't have the PhD behind it to publish papers. So how do you publish like a high-level paper, so to speak, intellectually thought-provoking paper as undergraduate students? I think that's the challenge of a research final year project. So for my final year project specifically, we are doing quantitative, so we are conducting large-scale surveys with sample sizes of up to 1,000 people. And then we have to write a very long paper, about 25 pages, which is actually due in like 3 weeks, correct? Final year project? Yeah. So that's 28 days, yes. Yeah, and correct. And how do you navigate with limited funds? Because we are not given like large amounts of grant money. We only have like a certain amount of money that's given to us. How do we recruit people to take our surveys? And that's the challenge, I feel. Yeah.
Thank you. So I challenge you again, like ask questions. What sort of options are available? A lot of programs have final year projects, but I think what's special about ours is the impact, the wider audience that they reach. Now, one of my last themes is I want to talk about the practical experience. You've already seen how FYPs, they actually do communication campaigns, right? They actually do documentaries. That theme of actually doing the communication runs throughout the curriculum here. So let me just flash up a few examples of the practicum experiences. Some of the most well-known are from journalism. So this was over 10 years ago. We actually sent a crew of students to North Korea to write stories published in international outlets, published in the Straits Times, sent the students over to North Korea, actually brought them back as well. That was good. And this is the kind of overseas experience that is subsidized by the school. Our most famous practicum of all is GoFar. GoFar, this year, Rwanda. They went to Rwanda, came back with reporting. Maybe you've seen some of it in the local news outlets. Just some other examples of the kind of practicum experiences subsidized by the schools, by our school. So I believe they're away right now. We've got students doing documentaries in Vietnam. This is for curricular credit, right? This is for their classes. International Film Festival in Busan, right? In Korea, one of the biggest international film festivals in the world. They go, the students go, they wear the black tie, they go to the premieres, but also they get to know how the industry runs. A film festival is not just an exhibition of films, it's a place where distributors are matched with filmmakers, and they get to, the students who go get to learn about the business side as well. The Perspectives Film Festival, the students organize a film festival, a ticketed film festival here in Singapore. The RSCM, the students take on an overseas partner, usually a nonprofit organization, and help them with communication campaigns. And then a very special opportunity, again, subsidized by the school, they'll tell us about the Cannes International Festival.
So a few of us also got the opportunity to participate in this module, which allows you to try a brief, a real-life competition called the Cannes Future Alliance. And at the end of this 13-week time of cracking the brief and producing an entry submission on a world stage, you actually get to go to Cannes, the Cannes Lion International Festival of Creativity in the south of France. And it was honestly a really life-changing experience for for all of us. I think as you can see, we met Megan Thee Stallion, we also met Redmond Rock. More than that, I met my favorite NBA star, so that was good, and things like that. But all the more, right, you know, you're in advertising for a really long time, you would want to see like agencies, and you would want to see and celebrate the work on like a world stage, and what better way to do so than on a red carpet in France. So at the same time, throughout this course, keeping in mind that it's part of the educational curriculum, We will also connect you with certain agency mentors, or for example, opportunities to attend talks and seminars to prepare you for this big opportunity to interact with like advertising giants and to actually understand a little bit more about how to break down briefs from the very beginning, or for example, things like insight and things like angling and aesthetics as well.
And Warwick will tell us a few words about research students will often go with faculty members to international conferences like the biggest of them all in our field, ICA.
Right, so my opportunity is not necessarily a course you can take week in week, but I'll just share a bit about some of the opportunities that you get as an undergraduate student as well. So I actually got the chance to go to the ICA 2023, not the Immigration Checkpoint Authority, but the International Communication Association Conference 2023, thanks to summer internship that I did at the Weekids Research Hub, under the tutelage of Assistant Professor Edmund Lee, and I co-authored a paper together with him and he got selected for in-person presentation there. So I managed to go to Toronto, Canada with other postgraduate students and master students along with my other undergraduate friend over there. His name is Ijia. He's currently at Weekids, so if you drop by later, you get to see him there as well. And it was very eye-opening experience, and it's interesting because they also the school also provides undergraduate students with an overseas conference travel support. So they kind of subsidize the amount of money you need to spend to go overseas as well. But it's a very eye-opening experience, and many research FYPs also end up submitting their papers for these conferences, and some of them do end up getting selected to present at conferences like the ICA too. Yeah, and also sightseeing was a plus.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the real hallmarks of the school is that the research projects actually reach a wider audience. My last slide, I want to remind you a few things to consider as you're making your decisions. We know that you have options, just want you to compare. Compare on the basis of flexibility. What kind of career options will you have when you go through the program? Compare on the basis of hands-on experience. Will you just be learning about communication, or will you actually get communication experience? Compare on the global opportunities. It's hard to match the NTU and Weekids School global opportunities.